Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie and television discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Koufax.
Yeah, I'm here, yeah!
Yeah. And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I am a prickly pear sewn onto the body of a Martian gorilla.
Oh, Martian gorillas are the name of the game, everybody, because this week we are going to be talking about the Umbrella Academy on Netflix. We're going to be talking about the whole darn season, not even splitting stuff up, because that's how crazy we are around here. But before we get
There's too much. There's too much.
It was a lot. It was a lot because I had to do it rather quickly. So sometimes too much is too much. But we'll see about that because we got a lot of things, and we have a couple of emails referencing said Umbrella Academy as well. But before we do that, we do want to take a second here and just say, hey, thank you to everyone that supports us over at patreon.com/HMP. You get a pre-show, post-show. You also get a Dinger Zone episode, which in this week we talked a lot about brushes with the law and things of that nature. So if you want to hear about some of the daring tales of youth gone wrong, head on over to patreon.com/HMP today and join up. We'd really appreciate that. And thank you to all of you who already do. Now, we don't do this too often enough, and I complained about it. And then they started rushing in, so let's go ahead and do it if it wants to play. I got a lot of technical problems. There it is. Oh, good Lord.
Bale's here.
My life works perfect.
How did you do that?
I think I double-clicked it, and instead of hitting the it's a glitch. Just say it's a glitch.
Yelled out, remix.
That's all we got to do. Bruce, you got the first email for us.
Oh, boy. Let me clear my throat.
Let me.
Take it over here, baby pop.
This comes from Craig, and it's titled TLDR, I like your show, corrected. Dear HMP, I'm writing in response to Adam's rather needy lamentations regarding the general lack of emails making their way to the HMP mailbag in recent weeks. I've been listening to your broadly fantastic output for a couple of years now. H&V, Chubby Wizard, Film Find, and Preacher podcasts are all part of my subscribed feeds, and felt moved to reassure you, in lieu of the ability to provide actual remuneration, that your work is always appreciated. To be fair, this is largely this is largely for Adam's benefit. Credit to Sean for attempting to rein in Adam's desperate pleas for affirmation from the general listenership and for trying to maintain at least a veneer of cool, or at the very least some self-respect. But I have genuinely been meaning to throw you guys a virtual high-five, fist bump, excruciatingly complicated but undeniably cool handshake, delete as appropriate, for some time now. I've managed to work my way through the back catalog of HMP podcasts and have really enjoyed listening to you guys find your shared voice. I'm sure you're at least vaguely aware of the BBC in the UK. Its mission statement is to inform, educate, and entertain. Your shows epitomize these values for me, and I love the fact that you've cultured a vibe which is unmistakably HMP. As someone with a couple of young girls, I have to give you thanks for keeping the podcast profanity free too. Based on the evidence I have available, this feat seems less impressive from Sean and Bruce, but for Adam, who seems to have a 10-word strong vocabulary, of which no fewer than 7 are curse words, this represents a gargantuan weekly effort bordering on the heroic. Before I make at least one of you sick from the sycophancy, I'll bring you back down to earth a little. My wife can't stand you. The minute she hears one of your voices from the kitchen while I'm making her dinner, she can't help but remind me how badly you all suck. Don't worry, though, lads. Despite her vehemence, I remain staunchly unconvinced. To be honest, I enjoy listening even if you're reviewing something I have no frame of reference for. I even like the show when you're reviewing things which are so bad that in all likelihood I will never see them, but it's especially good when you review something I've actually seen, and there have been a few things recently which have resonated. Firstly, Into the Spider-Verse. I know you gave this some love, but for me it is the new high watermark for comic book derived movies. That's why it won the Oscar. Period. It was a revelation for me. Visually, it was spectacular, and it had real smarts. I took my 7-year-old daughter to the cinema to see it, and we both walked out grinning like idiots and talked about it for days, much to the annoyance of my wife, who unfortunately had to work while we were laughing our butts off at the movies. In a first for us, we've even been back to the cinema to see the film a second time. It sparked a burgeoning interest in comics for my daughter, which is great, because she's always been drawn to utter rubbish on the magazine racks up to this point. You know, the stuff which is cynically marketed with laser focus at young girls by sticking cheap tat that happens to be pink and sparkly in a bag, along with a book that will inevitably fail to contain anything approaching artistry whatsoever, and singularly fails to engage the brain, let alone nourish the soul. Well, thanks to the Spider-Verse, she's over that now. It's also prompted me to purchase my first Spider-Man trade. Secondly, Daredevil Season 3. I'm in agreement with you about the general quality of the Netflix Marvel output. Thankfully, Daredevil has been something else. Your 2-part review was great. Definitely even-handed, but for sure you gave credit where it was due. It prompted me to go back and listen to the Heroes and Villains Daredevil episode 2, and I now have a copy of Born Again making its way to me along with my Spider-Man trade. Well, I'll say huzzah to that. I'm genuinely excited to hear what you guys make of Umbrella Academy in next week's show. I already got a sneak preview of what Bruce thinks of it via Chubby Wizard, but I get the feeling Sean is at the other end of the Robin rating scale for this one. It's in no way perfect, but it has a lot to recommend it from my perspective. Character-wise, Luther is maddeningly stupid, but Klaus, Hazel, and in particular number 5 are absolute standouts. The kid who plays number 5 is unreal, just ridiculously good. The production values were great, and despite the plot not having any real surprises, I think the script was smart and had genuine moments of humor. They did a great job on the soundtrack, too. This show comes in a close second to Daredevil for me in terms of Netflix output. I'm really looking forward to Bruce's comic book connection for this one and listening to what you guys make of the show in general. I've rambled long enough for now, so I'll leave it there, other than to give you a parting thanks again for all of the quality content you continue to put out there. Regards, Craig.
Craig, thanks for the email, man.
Craig, that's fantastic. And Craig's wife, chug it.
Careful, easy there.
Well, that's why there was the pause there.
It might,
He already complimented us, saying that you and I have a pretty good vocabulary.
But no, it's always good to see when that one thing that kind of sparks the interest in other people, and it's cool when you can be around at the genesis of that and just be like, especially if they become like a big giant lifelong fan. It's like I was there literally the moment where that switch got flipped. Man,
cool. What a cool thing to witness to.
Yeah. I've got a couple other emails, but those are more specifically towards Umbrella Academy, and I want to put those a little later in the show, and it'll give me another excuse. Let's see if I can do it correctly this time. Let's close up the mailbag.
Bale's here.
Only one play that time. That's not too shabby. It's all just going downhill from here, everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to it. You heard the email. This week we are reviewing the entirety of the first season of The Umbrella Academy. Here is the trailer.
In October 1989, 43 women around the world gave birth. None of these women had been pregnant when the day first began.
How much do you want for it?
I have adopted 6 children, gifted with abilities far beyond the ordinary. I give you the Umbrella Academy.
Does anyone wish to speak?
It was a monster.
Everything about our family is insane. It always has been.
Is that my skirt?
Oh, yeah, this. It's very breathy on the bits.
Nice to see nothing's changed. I jumped forward and got stuck in the future. Do you know what I found? Absolutely nothing.
When's it supposed to happen?
In 8 days.
Oh, shit.
There's someone out there who's trying to stop me from preventing the apocalypse.
We need the full force of the Academy.
Bingo.
Yay, sisters. Yay, sisters.
Get up, we're going.
Where?
Save the world.
Oh, is that all?
Alrighty, that was the trailer for The Umbrella Academy. It is currently on Netflix. We're going to be reviewing the first season. And, of course, if you are new to this show, do keep in mind that we do have spoilers for everything here. So, keep that in mind. Here is the IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. A disbanded group of superheroes reunites after their adoptive father, who trained them to save the world, dies. I don't know who wrote that, but great job. Well, let's get down to it, everybody. Come on. You got it. There it is. Bruce, I hear tale this is based on a comic book?
Yes. The Umbrella Academy is a comic series written by Gerard Way. And you may or may not know that Gerard Way was/is the frontman for a band called My Chemical Romance, a.k.a. the Black Parade Band. Now, the first story arc was called The Apocalypse Suite and published by Dark Horse Comics. Gerard Way actually did the character drawings for The Pitch, which you may or may not know, because it turns out that the emo, goth, punk, pop mashup music isn't Gerard Way's first love. He began drawing independent comics at age 15. And at age 16, guess what Gerard Way did, guys? Guess what Mr. Gerard Way did at age 16?
Olympic decathlon gold medal winner.
Nope. He appeared on an episode of Sally Jesse Raphael.
You got
discuss. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. At age 16, he appeared on an episode of Sally Jesse Raphael to discuss the controversy surrounding the publicizing of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer's murders in comic books. Now, to pursue a career in the comic book industry, he attended the School of Visual Arts in New York City, graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in 1999. I think his plan was to draw, but in the end, writing is where he found his knack. When he began writing The Umbrella Academy, Wade made no secret of the fact that he was heavily influenced by Grant Morrison's run on the Doom Patrol. And sort of in a some dreams do come true, circle of life, something or other, Gerard Way was tapped to write the Doom Patrol when DC relaunched it as part of the Young Animal imprint a couple of years ago. Now, I understand that nearly every creative type has influences and they incorporate what they love from others into work of their own. But my largest criticism of Gerard Way is that his writing is more an imitation of Grant Morrison's than simply in the same vein as Grant Morrison's. Occasionally, I even accuse Way of trying to out-Morrison Grant Morrison. It would be like if My Chemical Romance only played Jefferson Airplane cover songs and occasionally tried to drop even more acid than Grace Slick. They would be the exact same musicians that they are today, but likely taken a little less seriously because you can only re-release White Rabbit so many times before people quit caring. Then band members leave. Then you're desperate for money and you show up on the Star Wars Holiday Special. Then one thing leads to another and you're releasing crap like We Built This City on Rock and Roll. But I digress. When asked if he had ever read Grant Morrison's work, Alan Moore famously answered, "I've read it twice, once when I wrote it and a second time when he did." I guess by that rationale, Alan Moore has read Gerard Way's work 3 times. Because, like I said before, Gerard Way kind of swings from Grant Morrison's nunchucks. But back to Apocalypse Suite. The final art was not done by Way, but by Gabriel Ba. And it's quite fun and cartoonish. I think it works really well for the story and has fun with the ridiculousness of the world and is a very dynamic style. Most of the characters from the comics appear in the show, but the comics was only 6 issues, 22 pages each. The show, 10 hours worth of programming. They have to add a little something to it. So the show does add quite a few characters that aren't in the comic. The comic does have an Indian bodyguard dressed in a turban and military outfit that the show ignores. The comic also introduces a couple of smaller villains that the show ignores. In the first issue, the kids fight against the steampunk robo-zombie of Gustav Eiffel while he weaponizes the Eiffel Tower. And they also battle a Dr. Terminal who is suffering from a disease known as Einstein syndrome. As far as the main characters go, Luther actually has his head sewn onto the body of a Martian gorilla rather than simply having a transfusion as he does in the show. Pogo is called Dr. Pogo. Mom is actually a mannequin that has been brought to life rather than a robot, which kind of explains the relationship between Number 5 and Dolores a little better. Number 5 is closer to 10 years old in the comics rather than the 15-year-old form he has on the show. Diego is called Kraken because in addition to being good at throwing knives, he can breathe underwater or at least hold his breath for a superhuman length of time. And Seance/Klaus has the power of telekinesis in addition to his ability to channel the dead. And his appearance and dress in the comic make it fairly obvious to me that he serves as a surrogate for the writer, a.k.a. Gerard Way. I think Klaus's first line in the comic is, and I quote, "I love funerals because all the clothes I own are black," end quote. And, just come on, look at the My Black Parade music video and look at how Klaus is drawn. It makes sense. Vanya in the comics had not played violin for several years when the comic story started, but a mysterious call from an evil maestro gets her to play again, and she turns into the white violin at about the midpoint of the comic rather than near the end, as she does in the show. Vanya kills Pogo and slits Allison's throat in a fashion similar to the show, but sad, at least sad for me, Hazel and Cha-Cha don't appear in the comics, and neither does the handler, but non-specific temporal cops do show up at a diner rather than a donut shop. Agnes is in the comic, but only for a panel or two, and Detective Eudora Patch is a replacement in the show for what appears in the comic as an old man cop named Lupo. The comic did win an Eisner Award and earn respect for Way as a legitimate writer and not just a celebrity that thought writing comics would be easy. For the record, the worst attempt at writing a comic by a non-comic person is R.L. Stein's Man-Thing, as far as I'm concerned. That was terrible. And he's even a writer, just not a comic writer. So though I do think it's fair to call the Umbrella Academy basically Doom Patrol fanfic, it is really good fanfic and a quick read at only 132 pages that makes for a great companion piece to the series.
Now,
Adam, had you ever read it before?
No. I feel like I had vaguely heard of it once or twice, but not really. No real clue about any of this. So I went into this entire thing as blind as you can get.
Oh, very good.
And I don't know, at the time when it's probably 10 years old now. Time runs away from me really quick. But at the time it came out, it was also when My Chemical Romance was still fairly in heavy rotation on the radio.
You hear that, Gerard Way? You're not relevant now, says Bruce Leslie.
Well, My Chemical Romance hasn't put out an album in a while. But anyway.
He's got to have time to creatively refuel. Give him a break.
I thought that it was some kind of just like music video in graphic novel form or something. I didn't take it seriously, so I didn't pick it up. And then at some point, what is it in Resident Evil movies? They have the Umbrella Corporation.
Yeah.
At one point, I got confused and thought it was some kind of Resident Evil thing, so I didn't pick it up. But when I did finally read it, it's a fun read. It's a fun read, but pretty obvious where the influences lie. Actually, though, I think Umbrella Academy is better than when he actually got to write Doom Patrol. But maybe that's a conversation for 2 weeks from now, or maybe for later this episode. I don't know.
So, Sean, were you book familiar at all?
Oh yeah. I read the first two trades, and they're in the third story arc now, aren't they, Bruce?
They put out. The third story arc. Yes, I think it's complete. But it's super recent. It just came out within the past few months. I would say the last issue 6 of that third arc, probably came out within the last month. And I think it was timed to kind of coincide with the show coming out on Netflix. But the first two story arcs, boy, I wish I had those years. But the time that passed between the second story arc and this has to have been 5 or 6 years. This isn't, it just doesn't feel like an organic story art. I feel like they were trying to capitalize on the show.
And Way's writing it all?
Without a doubt.
What's that, Adam?
Way is writing all of it?
As far as I know. As
So
far as I
far.
know, he owns the rights. I mean, unless he hires somebody to write it,
That's pretty
I don't
good.
think somebody else can.
That's pretty good.
I
Of course, he had nothing to
remember-
do with the show. He had nothing at all to do with the show, but he's still writing the comic.
He gets
He
a
was
little
a
bread.
consultant.
He gets a little bread. Don't you worry.
I remember reading these and liking them, those first two trades, but there wasn't I couldn't remember a lot of it because
And
it's
here-
been so long.
And I'm sorry, just to update on the dates. The first 6 issues, the first trade was 2007. Second trade was 2013, and the most recent one was started in October 2018.
Working at a Brian Hitch pace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
working at
yeah, basically.
whenever I got nothing else to do, I sit down and write the Umbrella Academy.
And I remembered liking it. I didn't think it was it was too much like a bunch of other things, but it was still good. It
I
wasn't
think the
something
art does a lot for it.
For
I really
sure.
do think Gabriel Ba's art does a lot.
especially when they're little kids. They're so adorable with their little uniforms and their masks on. Like it's very, very cute.
And Gerard Way makes the good decision, at least in the first story arc. He makes the good decision not to over-explain anything.
Right.
You put a little nugget here or there. If you want to explain a backstory, there's like one panel that just kind of shows Pogo in a cage with like eyelid speculums and IVs in him and stuff, and you just kind of get the idea of the horrible experience it was turning Pogo into a sentient chimpanzee. They just briefly hint at how Luther had to get his head sewn onto a Martian gorilla's body. Like, you're not going to have a lengthy 3-issue arc that's just all about when Luther got his head sewn onto a gorilla body.
Well,
Like,
that's probably coming.
maybe. But one thing I will compliment, and part of it, I mean, he was touring when he wrote this, and he managed to write it all on schedule. So I think not having a whole lot of time to devote to writing helped the pace out, because I read some of his later work with Young Animal when all he had to do all day long was write, and it's rough, man. And the first trade, the sort of forward to the first trade, at least the edition that I read, was actually written by Grant Morrison. And it just turns out that he approached Grant Morrison before he wrote it and asked him like if he would read the scripts for him. And Grant Morrison said, in not so many words, he said, "I kind of like that Black Parade music video." So I said, "Sure, why not?" And he said, "And I expected it to be about like any other comic that a pop star writes, pretty much hideous. But it wasn't hideous, and that's a good thing." And I didn't expect him to ever get the second issue out. I thought it would be like he's really pumped to write it. He'll write one issue, see how much work it is, and quit. But no, it came out on time. All 6 issues came out on time.
That's what he wrote on the cover. Not hideous, Grant Morrison. And then just gave it back.
How long has it been since you read that first trade?
For me,
Yeah.
I reread it yesterday.
Because I didn't remember it being so much like the Dark Phoenix, like the TV show is.
Oh, okay. Well, here's what I would say: is it maybe isn't as much like the Dark Phoenix in the comic. I mean, in the comic, she's clearly manipulated. I mean, she is manipulated in the TV show too. But I mean, in the comic, the maestro of this evil symphony that's called like the Symphony Terminatum or something like that. I mean, his whole plan is to play this symphony that's so terrible it will cause Armageddon. And he knows who she is because he had managed to get his hands on the notes. I mean, it does parallel the plot of the story, but like at the end of issue 3 or the beginning of issue 4, he's got her strapped down to a table, this evil maestro guy, sticks her head in what looks like the speaker of an old Victrola, and plays some kind of music that turns her evil on the spot. Right. So it's not like the Phoenix story at all. I mean, she's not looking at her own hatred. It really doesn't play on her own hatred of the family at all. It's all about this guy uses this machine to turn her evil for his evil symphony.
You listen to enough Kaja Goo Goo, your brain's just gonna go to melt and become bad.
And in the comic, the ending is close, but not exactly the same as we get in the show. And Klaus is very clearly the guy who saves the day in the comic, who is, of course, the Mary Sue, if I can borrow a term, the Mary Sue equivalent for Gerard Way. in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Who, I mean, do we need to talk about how the character of Klaus in the TV show is a little bit more obvious, I guess, a little more colorful than he is in the comic. They only hint at the fact that at one point he says, well, I've been up on speed for 3 days. I think there's only one allusion in the first trade to any drug use from Klaus. But, Gerard Way himself had some trouble with drugs in the past. He's sober now, like many rock stars, had some trouble with drugs in the past, has self-described gender fluid as far as his gender identity is, and he's talked about some struggles he's had with his gender identity. I think we can see where he might be a little bit of the inspiration for Klaus. And Klaus did play in a band in the comic, which is something they left out of the TV show.
Yeah, rightfully so. They shouldn't. He shouldn't be in there. And also the Gerard Way also has the very weird quality of he looks younger now than he did 10 years ago.
Yeah. And he's at least the last time I've seen him, he looks like he weighs about 12 pounds. I mean, he's a thin guy. A lot of physical similarities too to the character of Klaus.
Yeah.
Or Seance if you prefer.
Guys, no, it's happenstance. Total yeah, sure it is, buddy.
So
But,
the thing that I want to talk about, because I think the entire show is centered around this. I think that if this is done poorly, this show doesn't work. And it's number 5. Number 5 is by far what makes this show run. The kid that they have playing him is amazing. I completely believe that there is a 60-year-old man in that 13-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And I had to look it up after like the 4th or 5th episode where I went, how old is that kid actually? And he's 16.
Yeah. I saw that he was born in 2003. So probably 15 at the time they were filming.
So just I'm
overwhelmed.
Just an incredible performance by that kid. And he's going to be in a bunch of things coming up already, but this is star making as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I am absolutely overwhelmed with how good that guy is at such a young age.
Best actor in the whole show,
man.
Now, this whole cast as a whole, though, is an admixture. It's a real admixture of like established and new faces, and I thought that it all worked. Was there anybody that really didn't pull their weight with the cast? Was there anybody in the cast you were really disappointed with?
No. I mean, the weakest performance is Mary J. Blige, and she was good.
I disagree, man. I liked her as Cha-Cha. I never knew that she could act. I thought she made a great Cha-Cha.
She plays angry the entire show.
And I always thought, if they ever do that Night Court reboot I found who can be the bailiff. Mary J. Blige.
Well, why did you just start with that?
I think for me, if there was somebody that I thought might have been a little weak, one is weak and one is just like Ellen Page, you're getting Ellen Page, right? I mean, you know exactly what to expect, and that's exactly what you get. Like, yes. And I don't know if that's a weakness or not, but I don't feel like she really had to push herself very much in her role. The other person that I kind of felt like maybe they didn't bring a whole lot of presence to the screen, and she's a stage actress. This is maybe her first screen credit, but the actress who played Allison Rumor, her background, as far as I could tell, was on stage, and maybe that's got something to do with it. But I felt like she felt pretty easily replaceable.
Oh, I disagree, man. I think that she's because she's got a hard job here. Because she has to be kind of a terrible person, but you still have to like her. She does a lot of bad things in this show.
I think the problem was, I know she does bad things, but I never felt like she played that like a bad person. And maybe that's what she's going for, but I just, it didn't feel real. Didn't feel real to me when they're showing the flashbacks of her using mind control on her daughter.
On everybody. On the entire world.
Yeah, that's okay. She's allowed to use it on the entire world. It's the only time she crossed the line is when she's using it on her daughter. In my opinion,
I thought she did just fine. That is the great joy to the show.
And like I said, we're looking really hard to find anything.
Yes.
On any other show, she might be the one that I like the best. But whether it's, like I said, a name that's a household name like Ellen Page or Mary J. Blige, or it's somebody like the actress who this is her first non-stage role, as far as I can tell. I mean, they've got a nice admixture, but everybody's bringing a good performance. Did you recognize Luther at all?
Not Luther, but we'll get to that. Oh yeah, actually I did, because he's Dickon Tarley.
Yeah, he's Dickon from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's the only place I know him from, and probably the only place most people would know him from, because it's like super popular, and he had a really he was the center of memes for about 6 months with his name.
Right. But the actor that blew me away, because I knew him, but I had to look it up, is the actor who plays Hazel, Cha-Cha's.
Now, I watched Mindhunter.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was
he was so creepy and perfect. Like, he is the one who it's like, man, this guy is awful, but boy, is he not charismatic. And he's got this big, huge, ugly frame. And like, how does he seem so soft? You know what I mean? Like, all at the same time. That guy was a great Ed Kemper. And I think he made a wonderful Hazel, because Hazel had a lot of those same qualities as Ed Kemper. Yes. So maybe he's typecast. I don't know.
And it was weird, because every so often the character of Hazel, that actor, he gave him that super enunciation that Ed Kemper has in Mindhunter.
Yeah.
And so every so often it would get me again, where I'd be like, oh, where do I know him from? Because I've started doing this thing lately where I don't want to look it up anymore. I want to be able to figure out who it is and use my brain to figure out who it is. And I couldn't do it on that one, because he's so unrecognizable as his character on Mindhunter, even though he's a gigantic dude.
Yeah. He's great, man. He's great.
So good. Cameron Britton is his real name.
Not only is Hazel a name that you think might be a lady's name, but also the real life name, Cameron Britton. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a lady's name too.
Aidan Gallagher, that's the kid who played number 5.
Yeah, he's a superstar in the. He's the, what was the guy's name from Weekend at Bernie's? Jonathan Silverman.
Jonathan Silverman, yeah.
He's the next Jonathan Silverman. You watch.
Oh man, if we get a remake of Soul Man, well then all of society will have to change in order for that to happen.
We all win.
Yeah, so the kid Aidan Gallagher, who plays number 5, he is in a Nickelodeon show, Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn.
He plays Nicky.
Oh, so he's the main character on that show.
Well, he's one of them.
But so did you recognize him right away as the same person from that show?
No, I just read his Wikipedia entry when I looked up how old he is.
Oh, I see.
So I knew that he was Nicky from Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn.
I gotcha. Because my kids are too old to watch stuff on Nickelodeon now, but that seems like one of those things where there's going to be this cross section of society where, you know what, I guess I will check that thing out, and they'll know that number 5 is actually Nicky.
That'll be awesome. And I think pretty much covered the whole cast there. The guy that plays the monocle. Plays Reginald Hargreaves. He's not in the show much, but you look him up, you'll recognize him. He's a good actor.
Well, we haven't spoken about Robert Sheehan yet. And
Robert Sheehan, what I think I like best about him is that he comes from the same place as Cassidy on Preacher comes from, the Misfits, the UK show, the Misfits, right?
Right. And actually, the guy who plays Cassidy is the actor. He replaced Sheehan on Misfits because Robert Sheehan took off to greener pastures, and they replaced him with Cassidy.
And these are two characters, kind of birds of the same feather. I mean, this is the Cassidy of the show, right?
Yes.
Which is awesome.
It is. It's so cool. And what makes this so great is that just at the end of 2018, I watched Robert Sheehan in what is the most gloriously horrible movie I've seen in probably 10 years in Mortal Engines. It is so awful.
Now, I've seen Mortal Engines, but I didn't realize he was in the movie.
He's the main character in the movie.
That shows how highly I thought of Mortal Engines.
He's literally the main character. Actually, no, he's like the second main character.
Yeah, because a movie like that, the lady's always the main character.
Right.
I was hoping you would tell me he was the space zombie that was coming to kill her or whatever.
The Terminator.
Yeah.
Just everything about him in this project is terrific. And he feels like somebody who desperately needed a win because he hasn't been in a lot of great stuff since Misfits. And he was in this little movie a bunch of years ago now, and it might have actually been the first thing he was in after Misfits. He was in a thing where they kidnap Bono, and it's pretty great. It's a pretty great killing Bono. That's what it is. And after he leaves Misfits, that's his next thing up. And it's a pretty good little movie. It's interesting, but then he does stuff like, a bunch of stuff I've never even heard of. But then he's in like this weird movie Moonwalkers, and he just didn't have good enough people behind him, like his management team and his agents. Like they're not doing him any favors. He's in Geostorm. I mean,
oh boy, that's
kid.
like the worst movie I've seen in a very long time. I did not like that movie.
Right.
Now, I've got a couple questions here on the show. Like, I don't know how. I liked that it didn't go out of its way to make some story points clear, but I also wonder how that's going to hit some other people. And I'm kind of real curious, maybe Adam, since you haven't read the comic, what you take away from this, because it's there, but it's not super clear if you don't know what they're talking about. But let's start with the fact that 43 women gave birth, immaculate conception type birth. And we have 7 of them at the Umbrella Academy. So what do you guys infer happened to the rest of the kids?
Feels like they should have really said something about like where these. I mean, because one would assume that these kids could become, the villains of the world, so to speak, but we don't really explore that.
Well, you got to remember that they were born to women who not only hadn't done what it takes to become with child, but weren't even showing signs of pregnancy. They just popped out.
I thought that opening scene was like really effective with the girl, and all of a sudden jump in the pool and is pregnant, and then is like literally in the middle of giving birth as she's being pulled. Like I thought that was really well done.
And I think the idea, at least the idea from people who've read the comics and talk about the comics, try to interpret stuff. I haven't read everything, so I don't know how much is made clear in the comics and how much is sort of the idea that Gerard Way was going for, what he said at cons and stuff. But probably only 7 of them survived. A lot of these babies died pretty soon after being born, because who knows what situation they were in when they were born. So that there were only 7 that survived, which I don't know. The number 7, doesn't that have, like, in numerology circles, that's a significant number, right?
Yeah, it's considered like a really good number.
And then, what Hargreaves' kind of theory behind this is that collectively these children are the Messiah. Because this is pretty much following the whole Bible story of the Immaculate Conception and miraculous birth, and now they've got to save the world in a way. So that was Hargreaves' idea, that these were the collective Messiah. Now, Adam, you specifically, again, what did you pick up about Hargreaves? Like, what would you tell me about Hargreaves after seeing the show? Why him?
Which one was that again? The guy, I mean,
the
like
monocle. He's also
dad
the
guy.
monocle.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a rough taskmaster. That's easy for me to say. I think that's also one of the problems with the show is that we don't have enough time with him, and we do have a cold opening where we see him saying goodbye to a lady because he has to go to America. And it's like, okay, so he's in Europe and he's going to take the boat to Ellis Island. And then all of a sudden in the background, you see rocket ships taking off. Hargreaves is an alien. Did you pick that up from the show? Not in any way, shape, or form.
And they gave us that little hint there. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right, Sean? The scene where the rockets are going off in the background, then you see him showing up and he buys an umbrella store. And you probably noticed that, like, this is taking place in roughly present day, but he looks about the same age as he does in roughly present day when he's starting that umbrella store in what has to be like 1896 or something.
Okay. Also, let's keep in mind that Adam had to watch every episode like within a span of like 2 days, probably.
Yeah.
But I still think a lot of those subtleties. That's why I'm like asking though, because I don't think that everybody's picking up that Hargraves was an alien.
But that's what I love about the show is that not everyone is going to pick up on that.
And I guess that was the next question I was getting at is, do you think that's a good or a bad thing?
I think it's great because what it does then is that if you had to watch the show the way that Adam did, you know, a year and a half, 2 years from now, whenever they're coming back with Umbrella Academy, you're going to want to go backwards and start watching this again. And it's going to reward you for a rewatch, which doesn't happen with a lot of shows because there is a lot of subtlety to the show. And, you know, I say this all the time on the podcast is that one of the things that I love about what Netflix does is that when it comes to something like this, even people who aren't massive superhero fans will like the show, and they do like this show. You know, no one at work has been talking about Daredevil season 3 or Punisher season 2, but they're talking about Umbrella Academy.
And I do like the way that they set us up for what seems like it's going to be a fairly mundane comic story, if there's such a thing. I mean, we do see Diego throwing some knives and being kind of a Batman type vigilante. We can go with that. We do see that Luther is on the moon. So, you know, that's something that actual humans have done, has gone to the moon. They don't really set us up they don't really set us up for what we're getting into when suddenly, I think it's Vanya walks into the mansion and there's Pogo, the talking chimpanzee, welcomes her to the mansion with no explanation, no take a minute, no hold for your breath. It's like, this is just the world we live in. You better go with it. You know what I mean? I mean, it is just tossed in there as if a talking chimpanzee is commonplace in every TV show.
I like when shows do that.
This is also during the time where you know, monkeys are everywhere in comic books, where they're just literally everywhere.
Yeah, well, I know that I think they should cast this guy in the Detective Chimp movie because he really convinced me he was a talking chimpanzee.
Well, it's Adam Godley. You know who he is.
I didn't recognize him. He looked different.
He looked like a monkey. No, but he's a great actor, and so like that's one of those where you're just like, yeah, that's a really good fit, and like I mean, so somebody that can kind of I don't know how much or if they did any like motion capture for facial stuff or anything, but
yeah, they did. They had to have, man, because that monkey is way too expressive.
Really good, right? And I was
I'm going to say something controversial here, but I prefer Pogo's talking chimpanzee to Caesar from the last round of Planet of the Apes movies, which, you know, Andy Serkis is no small potatoes when it comes to mocap acting.
That is blasphemy.
Yeah,
sir.
that's a little much now. Come on.
I like Pogo.
Pogo's
a little more diminutive.
You just like it because you think that you could take it in a fight. So if you're ever to fight a monkey, that's what you could take. Caesar's whooping you all day. We know that. But Pogo, you at least got a chance with Pogo.
Hey.
But what you don't know is secret monkey strength.
One thing I learned spending a summer in Africa is never pick a fight with a monkey, no matter how small.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Or a lemur.
Lemurs are scrappy. We all know that.
Don't get into a jumping contest with a lemur.
Now, they're halfway through the first episode, too. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to have some lighthearted moments, which the comic has some lighthearted stuff. The comics, just the art style is lighthearted, even if there's not actual humor in the script. And I was worried watching the first part that maybe I wasn't going to get much of this. And then suddenly they start playing Tiffany, and they do the camera pan out like Dollhouse mode, where you see each one of the
it's a cross section of the mansion.
Yeah. Cool. Each one of the siblings in a different room dancing in their own way to I Think We're Alone Now, the Tiffany mall hit from 1988 or whatever. It's when she went on the tour of the malls in America.
If I can get onto my Adam Portrais soapbox for a moment, sir.
Yes,
Please.
I was going to ask you guys, good or bad? Did you like it? A pro, con, plus, minus, that Tiffany thing? Because there wasn't much else like that in the rest of the show.
I think it was all an excuse so they could do the cross section. But here is if I may borrow your soapbox for a moment, Mr. Portrais. Here is my problem with that scene. It has nothing to do with the show itself. Like I get why they're doing it. I think we're alone now, yet they're all dancing at the same time. That is very like you're showing us that even though they don't get along, they're still the same. They're still a family.
Show walks over and goes boop right on your nose.
I also think it's very cool if you're paying attention. They're all dancing differently. Each of them dance differently than the other, which is very cool. Like I was very surprised when I saw that. What is making me nuts about this scene is the overwhelming response on other shows on the internet of the people who completely take down the scene. People love the show for the most part, but the one thing that everyone keeps taking down is this scene because it is so divisive. This scene. Get over it. Get over it. It is a 3-minute dance sequence. It's all going to be okay.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because at times I thought this show needed a little more of something interesting to happen. And it also felt like that should have been where the episode closed. Like I felt like that's the scene that goes into the credits, but it wasn't. It was like midpoint of the episode.
Well, because they still haven't grabbed you, so you keep watching.
I know, but it just didn't it kind of feel like something like I thought, oh, okay, these are going to be 30-minute episodes, but no, it was just the midpoint of a 1-hour episode. Didn't it feel like something we're expecting credits to go as the song continues to play?
I hope. Look, I did for sure, but what they did was better than ending on this.
Yeah. I don't know. It's after the dance scene when we get introduced to number 5, or also called the boy.
Right.
And I think we're still in episode 1 when he goes to the donut shop, right? I mean, a lot happens in this first episode.
I don't remember at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because the boy comes back through the portal. First thing he wants is coffee. There's no coffee. He asks for the keys. And Klaus says, I kind of feel like we ought to stop him, but at the same time, I really want to see what he does. Right. And then the number 5 drives to the donut shop, and that's when the time cops show up. And this is pretty much where the episode ends, and it is a good way to end it because it is an excellent action scene in an episode that's had really no legit action scenes. I mean, we did see Diego throw a couple of knives at somebody, but it was mostly off camera. So I think that was something that we desperately needed because I really, really like a good action scene. And watching a 15-year-old boy, and we talked about this with Alita, how I really like the kid that's actually really solid butt kicker, even though you totally think what's this kid in these short leg pants doing in this donut shop? So I thought that was a great way to go out. I really got a little rush of adrenaline from number 5 showing what's up to the time cops.
But the real question is, what kind of coffee is this kid really looking for? Because he's going everywhere. He gets several different types. I mean, he's poured a cup of French press, and he just goes like, this is garbage. It's just,
well,
what,
he
what
has
do you
spent
want,
like
old man?
50 years in a post-apocalyptic landscape. So who knows what his expectation of coffee. He might want chicory.
I'm very confused by the whole thing. I'm just like, you are literally being poured this cup of coffee out of a French press. What more do you want?
Chicory is a big like a big lie that Martha Stewart started. That everybody likes it. No one likes chicory.
Just put a little chicory in it; it'd be fine.
And really, the big thread that goes through this show is people finding out truths and people finding out what has been kept from them, and sometimes finding out also for us how these characters got in certain situations. What did you guys like think Luther looked odd? I mean, you already knew where this was going, Sean, but yeah. Adam, did you wonder like what the heck are they trying to what angle are they going for here with Luther when you see him in his big coat and he's obviously got like inflatable muscles?
Oh my Lord. Okay. All right. Now, let's just go ahead and do it because we're this far into the episode. I don't know if people have been paying too much attention, but they've been like, thank goodness Adam's been shutting up this episode. It's mostly because I hate this show. I think this show's terrible.
Did you have any idea what was going on with Luther, or did you think they just wanted this guy
I didn't know what was going on, and then when we figure it out, I go, oh, that's stupid. How could you not, like, in today's technology where you're going to give this guy this giant stuffed suit, have a little tiny pinhead here, it's done horribly. It looks like garbage. I don't buy that for 2 seconds. It's horrid.
I kind of like that it looked like it did. It kind of matches how corny it looks.
And it is done on purpose, man. Like it's not a mistake. They did it. They made it look that way because it's that type of show.
It's crummy on purpose.
I feel like they chickened out by just giving him a blood transfusion. I think they should have just full on did like the comic where the monocle had to actually cut his head off his human body and sew it onto a Martian gorilla body.
Yeah, but I
would have bought that.
Bruce, I guarantee you, Bruce, that if they had done that, half of America shuts off the show after that.
I don't know, man. They've already paid their monthly subscription fee. What's it matter?
No, listen, the guys that I work with that are totally into the show, they're done. They're not watching the rest of the show.
And that kind of thing is funny to me when you can go with the transfusion of serum from a Martian gorilla, and that would cause your whole body to transform, but you can't go with just chopping his head off and sewing it onto a gorilla body.
I'd rather.
But I can tell you that they also don't know that it's a Martian gorilla.
Oh, they should.
They should, but they don't.
That's the thing. That's another contention with the show. Like, I understand, like, keeping stuff back and revealing things. Like, listen, I watched Lost for 6 seasons. I get it. You know what I'm saying? I don't mind it. But here, it just felt like we don't get to tell you that bit of the story just yet. And then when it was with his time, it was just like, wasn't that clever? It's like, no, it wasn't. No.
And how about, I am very surprised by this, Adam, because of the three of us, you're usually the one who's most on board with stuff like this.
And here's the thing, man. When you look at all of the elements that goes into this show, I should love this show. It's got like a lot of like great needle drop stuff. There's a lot of elements in here that equals Adam's going to love this. I don't know why, but it feels like somebody got into your journal, figured out the stuff that you like and go, oh, I'm going to make this perfect. And then it's like, then they get you that present that you always wanted. And then it's like, no, this isn't even close.
And Adam, I can't wait until you've seen a couple episodes of the Doom Patrol, and we cover that in a couple weeks. So you can kind of like item A, item B, like look at this, look at that, see what you think of the two. And
I don't know, man. This thing was like, it was a slog. And here's the worst part is that there's a couple of things in here to recommend it. There's a scene here, a scene there, an actor here, an actor there. That's like, oh, okay, I could see, and the rest sucks.
I felt like it needed a little more weird, or it actually had enough weird, but it needed to feature it a little bit more. I, too, felt like there were moments where it was kind of a boring slog.
Well, you guys are.
But I also really enjoyed other moments.
You guys are in luck because when we review Doom Patrol, there's going to be plenty in that for you.
Yeah, and I've already gone on the record on another podcast of saying I prefer Doom Patrol to this, but I don't dislike this the way Adam does. I'm just saying there were moments where...
I am so surprised to learn that, Adam, because I you know what? I am going to go the other way on this. I really, really like the show, but what really puts it over the top for me is number 5. Number 5 might be my favorite character in a very long time.
I'll say this. He is the best part of the show. And again, there's elements like that where like this kid comes out and I'm just like, he deserves a better show than this.
And I really admire Sean. I really admire how much, knowing the comic, how much you're able to enjoy it, because so much of this, I feel like the way that it's paced, and pacing is the issue for me. But I feel like so much of the way it's paced is that we're supposed to be sort of shocked when we find out that Vanya is the white violin. But for those of us who know where this is going, there's not much else there if you can't lean into that sort of twist. Now, I knew Leonard was kind of sinister, but he's not from the comics, and I couldn't quite figure out from what angle he was going to be sinister, or was he going to be like somebody in a different body, or was he going to be from the time? I didn't know exactly what his angle was, so I really did enjoy the episode where they said, the same day as the Umbrella Academy was born, this guy was born, but it was a normal pregnancy because he was a normal kid, and his mom died, and his dad was a jerk, and he murdered his dad and went to prison, wanted to join the Umbrella Academy, but the same thing that Vanya had always been told, you're just too ordinary, is what he was told. So of course he finds out her secret. And I like the way that I didn't catch on at first. Like, how did he get those notes? And then I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah, because Klaus needed to steal some money. So he got the box and threw the contents out and sold the box. Like, that's stuff that's not in the comic. And that stuff really did seem clever to me. The whole thing about Klaus going back to Vietnam and having this like moving experience that, took years in real time. It was only an episode, that we didn't even see him on panel, maybe a day or two in our current time. I really liked that aspect. So there's definitely stuff that I liked, but I felt like some of the quiet plotting moments weren't working on me because I knew where some things were going. And I was a little disappointed in the end. And since we're running low on time, I think we need to give our take on how this ends.
Well, I think it's great. You kind of cut me off because what I was going to say
I
is
apologize.
No, it's fine, man. Because the things that they changed from the book are some of the things that I didn't like about the book. Like the ending with the maestro and all. Like, I hated that character. I liked the Umbrella Academy. I liked the kids. I liked them I liked the adult versions of those kids. But the story itself felt clunky and weird. And so they basically went, what's really popular is the Dark Phoenix. So let's just make it the Dark Phoenix instead. And they did. And I've got to hand it to longtime HMP or Joe for bringing that up, because I had already seen all of Umbrella Academy when he made that point, and I was like, wow, he is 100% right. that is exactly what this is. It's just done better.
It's so many things. That's the problem. Sorry, Bruce, but that's one of the things that's so many things is the problem with this show, is it feels like it's a greatest hits of a whole bunch of stuff, and none of it is worthy of those great hits and stuff. I mean, we saw it somewhat a little bit in Heroes. It's here in this one. Like, how many times are we going to steal the plot from Rising Stars? I know no one read that book in the early 2000s, but like, that's like done way better than all of this crap. And that's a book that struggles towards the end because it doesn't quite get everything right.
There's no ending to that book.
Exactly. It doesn't end well, but like the whole process of that start is 1,000. It's like, it's almost kind of this concept in a lot of ways, but you do that plus X-Men, there's a lot of this crap in there where it just feels like you're warming over other people's stuff that's done things better than you have.
And one thing I really do want to point out on this one is, for all the comparisons and parallels that you see between this and X-Men, you got to remember that this is a property that went out of its way to try to be the Doom Patrol. And a lot of people overlooked that in the Silver Age, the Doom Patrol kind of put down the template for what became the X-Men.
Right.
So those similarities are there for an organic reason. But for me, what I meant about the ending disappointed me is because I don't feel like it ended. It was a cliffhanger, which is like, okay, now, like, this is one of those endings that if there is no season 2, it's just left you hanging.
There'll be a season 2. Everybody's clamoring for this crap.
Be a season 2 to this.
I know, but I still feel like if the first trade had left me at a spot where if there's never a second trade, I don't know how it's resolved. I would have been disappointed with the comic.
Sure.
If Daredevil season 1 had left me in a spot where like I felt like I really had to have season 2, I would have been disappointed. So it's not something that I'm specifically picking on this show, but there's a way to have both a setup for the next season and still feel like you had a satisfying arc this season.
Yeah, but sadly we don't live in that world anymore, and everybody's the great
we
Bambino.
Do. I just gave plenty of examples in the world in which we live where they end satisfyingly and still have another season.
But I'm talking like this is the new world order.
Like Alita Battle Angel, like where
exactly.
Even Alita Battle Angel, I felt somewhat satisfied with that ending.
Man, that's so crazy.
Then you look at Edward Norton and you go, "What is this?"
And do you think it's fair for me to point out some of the difference between the comic and the show here on the ending?
Sure.
Yeah.
In the comic, Klaus is the big star, and he pulls off a trick Here he does it for real. Like he's actually able to channel dead people and physically have them use stuff. Well, he pretends to be channeling Hargreaves at the end of the first one to kind of get Vanya off guard, and then he uses his telekinesis to actually stop the android or the meteorite or whatever it is, the chunk of the moon, from crashing into the earth. And everybody's like, wow, we didn't know you were that powerful, Klaus. And that's kind of they go home and they make a sandwich, and that's the end. In the show, they don't stop the apocalypse. They run away from it. I don't quite know where Vanya stands. I really felt like at the end there was going to be something that I felt like, wow, that's the end. And then season 2 is going to be another arc. And even the fact, I don't know, the fact that they ran back, I guess they're all kids again. So season 2, they're all going to be kids. So the only returning actor is number 5, I would imagine.
Probably. I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. I saw them when they go back in time or whatever, and then they're kids again. I was like, oh, I might actually have a passing interest in this, because I'll be honest, I've soured on pretty much, save for 5, I've soured on pretty much all the adult characters. I just don't care.
But whenever you're doing these complicated time travel stories, like there's a way to end with stuff up in the air that, I don't know, this ending felt unsatisfying to me.
Oh, I love it.
I don't think really it was. I definitely do not love it. I wouldn't go so far as to say I hate it, because there's some endings I would say I hate. I'll just say it was kind of unsatisfying. It really felt like they didn't know how to end it.
I'll say this. I think I'll split the difference. The ending is the least of the show's problems.
Well, we definitely have 3 different opinions on the ending then.
Wow, Craig is in for a real treat. I'm the one who likes the show the best.
All right, let's.
I don't dislike it. I'm just saying that I felt like the ending wasn't at all what I expected, and maybe that's what you liked about it, Sean, is that it was unexpected. But I really expected this to feel like a self-contained thing, and if they want to tack a little something on that lets me know what's going to happen in season 2. I mean, the comic had a second story arc without ending on a cliffhanger. I would think the show could do that too.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this, boys, because we actually have 2 emails that are related to this here program. So let's do it again. Ah, dang it. Don't do that again. I hit the wrong button. Oh, for the love of... Let's hit the right one this time, you big stupid idiot. There. That's... Oh.
Fails here.
Thank goodness. And this one comes to us from a longtime listener and Patreon supporter, patreon.com/HMP, Matt. His is entitled Spoilers, Umbrella Academy. First, I liked it, but I thought it suffered from Suicide Squad syndrome. Second, I found it amusing that everything Reginald did ensured the apocalypse. He brought the kids together. He emotionally abused and then neglected Vanya. He encouraged the other kids to isolate Vanya and treat her as second class. He humiliated Leonard/Harold, further unbalancing an unstable child. Finally, after creating bitterness and resentment between all the siblings and driving them all apart, he orchestrated his death, bringing them all back together, creating the Flashpoint. Reginald Hargreaves created the apocalypse. Way to go, genius. And that's from our good buddy Matt.
That's well said.
Well, the kids were supposed to be the Messiah, so I guess you mishandled the Messiah. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. Doctor Who taught me there are fixed points in time. No matter what you do, if it's your day to have the world end, it's your day to have the world end.
And they do point that out at a point. He just goes, look, the apocalypse is just going to keep happening, but we have to figure out, a way to make it not happen at this particular thing, I guess. So.
Yeah.
Next one here is from Jeremy. For whoever has the rights in the future, can we just retire the Dark Phoenix storyline from all of future X-Men properties? Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't think it's ever going to be done better than this. Ooh, he took a left turn on you. After Umbrella Academy, X-Men Dark Phoenix is going to feel like a cheap clone from another studio trying to ride the coattails a la Transformers or Transmorphers or something. Ooh, it's an Asylum reference. Very nice. Kind of sad because I have a soft spot for all the X flicks. Yes, even that one, and that one. But they have almost 60 years of stories to pull from, and they always want to come back to the Dark Phoenix. For my money, Umbrella Academy should be seen as a mic drop on that Dark Phoenix-like trope, and it should be shelved in pop culture for a while, so in Hollywood time, like 2 years. That's from Jeremy.
Yeah, but the Dark Phoenix, man, it is like it's the X-Men's equivalent of the Dark Knight Returns. You know what I mean? It's the X-Men's equivalent of Watchmen. It is the X-Men story. You know, people that loved Chris Claremont during the 80s, that story and Days of Future Past, but in particular the Dark Phoenix saga, it's got a soft spot in my heart, man.
I want to see Extinction Agenda.
I want to see the one where Magneto and Professor X turn into the same person and you know, they wreak all kinds of havoc.
I'll be honest, that latest X-Men trailer, I don't know if it's just a trailer, but it looked good. I was kind of like, I might be interested in watching this. When before I was like very, I just don't care. Maybe they edited the trailer together really well, but I don't know. We'll see. But thank you for your emails, guys. And if you want to, go ahead and send your emails into heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. Let's close up the old mailbag. See, I hit it right this time.
Bale's here.
All right. Now, before we get down to the actual reviews here and everything, we do have to ask ourselves the most important question that we can possibly ever ask is, how does this television show relate to Sylvester Stallone?
Paul H. Paulino is the visual effects texture painter on Umbrella Academy. And Paul H. Paulino is clearly a made-up name. No one names their kid Paul when their last name is Paulino. A baby is born and the best Mr. and Mrs. Paulino can come up with is Paul? Doubtful. So what's your story, Paul H. Paulino? Are you running from someone? Have you committed multiple felonies and needed a fresh start? I'll warn you, Paul H. Paulino, crime finds you. If we learn nothing from the movie A History of Violence, it's that Maria Bello looks great in a cheerleading outfit. Really great. Really, really, really great. And that crime finds you. Or maybe Paul H. Paulino doesn't understand how humans work because he's an alien and almost gets how us humans work. He says things like, I enjoy love, and baseball is a recreation that I participate in. Super close to how we speak, but not all the way there. Paul H. Paulino, I'm hoping the H stands for Halino. Paul Halino Paulino. Paul Halino Paulino also worked on a movie called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which feels like one of the Marvel movies that's quickly being forgotten. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. Maybe because it's so close to Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok, but whatever the case, it's really good. And Adam, Bruce, and the old Sean reviewed that movie during episode 156 of Hero Movie Podcast. And if you want a tour de force of co-hosting, listen to the job Adam Portrais does during that episode. Keeps it moving, brings thought-provoking questions to the review. Maybe one of the best episodes they had during that time. And it's not because of Bruce or old Sean. It's because of Adam Portrais. You know, Adam gets a lot of grief on this show because Bruce and I and even old Sean have made the podcast all-star team. But in my humble opinion, Adam Portrais deserves to be on that all-star team too. And not only because Adam's a good friend of mine, but also because I'm a fan. Sylvester Stallone also worked on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and he was pretty great in it. There's no terrible stories of him on set. He didn't send out a memo to the cast and crew telling them not to make direct eye contact with him because he's not that guy anymore. And because if you behave like that on a movie set, you won't be working for very long these days. Do you hear that, Madonna? We're not putting up with your garbage anymore. I hope we see more of him in the Marvel Universe because there's something great about having him around and something relevant. And there you have it. This week's Stallone connection is none other than Paul H. Paulino. Thank you. From Sean Koufax. Thank you so much.
I actually, believe it or not, I went to high school. Now, I didn't know this girl, but like it's one of those names that you hear over the announcements a couple times, and it's just like, that's a very interesting. Her name was Holly Hollyfield. I kid you not.
I like that name.
I think it was
a cool name.
I'm like, really? Okay. Well, here at HMP, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on over to facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the screen, and throw it a like. Why don't you? Bruce, where does season 1 of The Umbrella Academy on Netflix fall on the Robin rating system for you?
Well, this is going to be a complicated rating because it's conditional. I think this is a Tim Drake show. But if you're going to watch the show and really have the Tim Drake experience, you're going to have to read the trade. So this is the most bizarre recommendation. But if you read the trade, the Apocalypse Suite, and you watch the show at roughly the same time, you're going to have a Tim Drake experience. If you don't read the trade and you just watch the show, it's going to be a real crapshoot. It's going to be a polarizing show. You're either going to love it or you hate it. You're going to be a Sean, you're going to be an Adam. So I guess that makes it a Damian Wayne. But if you read the trade with it, and maybe you're a fan of Tiffany, her classic song, I Think We're Alone Now. That'll get you up to the Tim Drake level.
Which in and of itself is a remake, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, who wants to hear a dude who's never been in a mall sing that song when a chick in a mall can sing it?
Point well taken.
Yeah, so I guess it's Tim Drake so long as you read the source material.
Hey, Tim Drake with a homework assignment, everybody. Sean?
For me, it's a Tim Drake. I already did my homework. I really, really like this show, and I really like the character of number 5. He's one of the most interesting characters and so well played by the actor. So it's a Tim Drake for me, man.
Like I said, number 5 is good. There's enough moments in this that like you go, "Ooh, here's something, here's something." But everybody like this show is just it's a bore. I don't find 90% of it interesting. We barely talked about Ellen Page, and there's a reason. It's boring. She's so boring. This show just doesn't have like I said, it's got so many of the elements that say Adam should like this, but it never hits any of those notes properly. For me, it's not for me. I'll put it to you that way. That is the reason, because normally I would probably put this in Stephanie Brown, right? But I'm gonna go Carrie Kelly because this is good for somebody, but it's not me, right? So it's kind of that like I get it, I understand where it's coming from. I can see how other people would probably like this, not necessarily for me. So that's right in the same. That's an offshoot of Damian Wayne for those of you that don't know. So Carrie Kelly, right there in the middle, just kind of it ain't for me. So there you have it. So 3 fairly different thoughts here on this, but yeah, ultimately I just don't care. What did you think? Let us know on our Facebook page when we post this show up and everything. We'd like to hear what you thought and communicate with other members of the community. But because you know what, talk all you want. Next week we're going to be doing some big talking, everybody, because Captain Marvel is coming out, and if those trailers are anything to be believed, I think we're in for a pretty interesting time here. In the meantime, though, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I just had a great episode of Chubby Wizard all about Letterkenny, or I should say all about Letterkenny.
Yeah, do it right.
So if you want to know all about Letterkenny, go check out Chubby Wizard. And you know what? Why don't you keep in the Chubby Wizard vein? Go over to Amazon.com or Amazon.uk or Amazon.eu or Amazon. Whatever your country
Keep going.
is. And pick up Chubby Wizard, Wrath of the Manticore. Probably the single best piece of literature I've ever written about a Manticore. So that's what I'll promote this week. Amazon.com, Chubby Wizard, Wrath of the Manticore.
Very good. Sean?
You can read all of my work at SeanKoufax.com. For all of your Sean Kovac needs, SeanKoufax.com.
Very good.
And insurance.
And adjusting insurance.
Yeah, you can't just have the insurance. You got to be able to adjust that insurance when need be.
For sure.
Like a trucker hat.
Like a good trucker hat. I don't have anything to promote because I'm just tired and I don't care anymore. This show has taken everything out of me, and with my computer problems, man, everything is just coming up, punch me in the face. So just, you know what would make my day? Go over to patreon.com/HMP. I'm going to be doing some more. I got some stuff, so I'm going to do more art and stuff for, specifically for other Patreon people and stuff like that, just to give myself something else to do. But that's it. So yeah, check that out. And Preacher's coming back. Do we want to do a big announcement of our new stuff? Do we want to do that now or do it later?
Well, maybe you should tell me in private.
We'll do it in the after show, I guess. You'll get that by going to.
One time you made a big announcement that I was totally caught clueless on, and that was HMP.
I was about to say, that's how this show started, didn't it? Hey, we got a big announcement. By the way, 5 years later, he still doesn't realize he's on a new show.
Guest starring Bruce Leslie.
Who's a what now? Just check it out, everybody. Join us next week for Captain Marvel. For Sean Koufax, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Goodbye, Marty and Evie.
That's what they say when we're together. And watch how you play. They don't understand, and so we're running just as fast as we can. Holding on to one another's hand. Trying to get away into the night. And then you put your arms around me and we tumble to the ground. And then you say, I think we're alone now. Doesn't seem to be anyone around. I think we're alone now. Beating of our hearts is the only sound. Look at the way we gotta hide what we're doing. 'Cause what would they say if they ever knew? And so we're running just as fast as we can, holding on to one another's hand, trying to get away into the night. And then you put your arms around me and we tumble to the ground. And then you say, I think we're alone now. Doesn't seem to be anyone around. I think we're alone now. Beating of our hearts is the only sound. I think we're alone now. Doesn't seem to be anyone around. I think we're alone now. Beating of our hearts is the only sound. Running just as fast as we can, holding on to one another's hand, trying to get away into the night. And then you put your arms around me and we tumble to the ground. And then you say, I think we're alone now. It doesn't seem to be anyone around. I think we're alone now. Beating of our hearts is the only sound. I think we're